Hey everybody, it's Charles from HumbleMechanic.com. Today, taking your questions on carbon buildup, replacing bolts, one thing I've already forgotten, and more. This is episode 249 of the Humble Mechanic Podcast. All right, Happy New Year. First video of 2019. I'm super pumped. Hope you guys all had a safe and excellent New Year's and holiday season. If you want to get a question on a show like this, be sure to email me, charles@humblemechanic.com. Put question for Charles in that subject line. Ask question. Give me the details of all that stuff. That way I actually know your question while I'm reading the information. Helps me out a ton. Also, you can listen to these and other videos if you'd like in an audio podcast available on iTunes, Stitcher, Google, or of course over at HumbleMechanic.com. All right, let's talk about the sponsor of the day, which is CRP Automotive. CRP deals in a ton of OE maintenance and repair parts, timing belt kits, suspension components, and even fluids. In fact, they make the factory DSG fluid for Volkswagen and Audi. So check them out at crpautomotive.com. And if you like the show, want to help support it, check out the crew membership program. Great way to do just that, support the show. But more importantly, score yourself some discounts to places like Black Forest, Eastwood, MT Knives, Kerma TDI, S&P Automotive, USP Motorsports, Scanner Danner, Mechanic, and a whole bunch more. As always, links to that and everything we talk about today are down in the description, or if you're listening, they are on the blog at HumbleMechanic.com. That's wrapped up. Let's hit the questions. First one up is from Joe. Actually met Joe at an autocross event. Really rad dude. He is having cold start misfire issues on his Golf R. Consulted the guys over at Blair Automotive in Texas. Ryan Blair is actually a good buddy of mine, so ups to those guys. They said it's probably most likely carbon buildup. Spoke with some dealerships and they want him to come in for a walnut blasting because that is the best route. I've watched numerous videos on YouTube, including yours and ShopDapt. I'm gonna go one of two ways in the walnut blasting. Go to the dealership, pay about $900, learn nothing and receive no gratification of doing something. Amen to that, dude. Or two, go ahead and purchase the tools, send it in the dark, following YouTube videos at risk destroying the engine. I'm a medic, not a mechanic, but I am a hands-on learner. I hope you understand what I am saying. So, respectfully, Joe, great question. Should you do this yourself or should you pay almost $1,000? Ugh, that's a lot of money. Not saying that it's not a good value to pay that, but that's just a lot of money. These jobs, guys, are not hard as long as you follow the steps. Now, I haven't watched any of these other YouTube videos about walnut blasting or other ways of media cleaning. I will tell you, though, at home, walnut blasting can be a mess, right? The shops have special adapters that really make this job super simple. You don't need to tape the whole engine compartment off or anything like that. At home, you know, walnut blasting may not be the best way. I've done a lot of these by using harsh, nasty chemicals, which is an option, although breathing that crap is definitely not good for you. Joe, as a medic, you could probably appreciate that. For a while, Audi was actually recommending you take a band of zip ties and just cram them into, into clean the valves, which actually worked. It actually worked, but maybe not the most ideal situation. So, Joe, you know, this is really going to be up to you. As far as buying tools, there's not a whole bunch you're going to need. If you're going to do the walnut blasting, of course, you're going to need some type of walnut blaster. I got a really crappy one from like Tractor Supply, I think, for $20. But you're also going to need an air compressor and walnut media, right, to blast that. Plus, the big hurdle on doing it at home with walnut is you're going to tape everything off, and it is really going to make a pretty big mess. You also need, you know, face mask or whatever you're going to use to keep from breathing all that nasty walnut dust. One of the keys to doing walnut blasting or carbon cleaning really, period, at home is you want to make sure that whatever cylinder you're doing, the valves are closed. I usually overcompensate when I do that, and I will take the spark plugs out. I will run my compression nozzle hose in, and I'll hold my thumb over it and rotate the engine around clockwise by hand until I hit that compression stroke, and you'll actually feel some pressure behind your thumb or finger to make 100% sure I have the valves closed, TDC, compression, because we know then they're definitely going to be closed. I realize that's a bit of overkill, but what's the alternative? You don't get it closed, and you get a bunch of media or a bunch of carburetor cleaner down in the cylinder. None of that is what we want. So make sure they're on TDC compression. At least that's what I do. You can look at them usually and make sure they're closed, but I take that extra step. Plus, if I'm doing a carb cleaning, I'm probably putting spark plugs in it anyway, so taking them out's no big deal. The one special tool, Joe, you might actually need to get is going to be something to reseal the injectors. Now, on the Gen 3 stuff, you probably don't need that because the fuel rail and everything stays in the car, so the injectors aren't going to come out. On the CCTA, CBFA engines, you are going to need that kit. I'll try and drop a link down in the description so you guys can see exactly what I'm talking about for that reseal kit. In fact, I did a video on how to do it, so I'll link that up in the top corner. So Joe, I'd probably take a whack at this myself. It is not a hard job. Just make sure you take your time, stay organized, and if you got the intake manifold off and you're feeling good, keep going. If you're like, I get the intake manifold off and this is the most stressful thing ever, stop and put it back together, and then maybe it's worth paying someone else to do. But either way, man, great question. Hope you're doing well. Hope the family's well, and I look forward to seeing you in the next autocross, man. Missed you at the last one, but want to see that R run again. Maybe we'll put a little friendly beer wager on that one. All right, next up, hey, I have a technical question about a particular part number for bolts, fasteners that hold the engine and transmission together. I have a 2000 GTI. Doing some poking around as I'm fixing to replace the engine or transmission. I bottomed out and suffered a total loss of power. Actually, she's not going to any gear and also won't start. Seemed to have chipped off the piece of the engine and broke a bolt or two away from the bell housing. Can't seem to find any bolts on any part store's online inventory. Thanks for the awesome content you produce. All right, so my understanding of this question is that you're looking for bell housing bolts or dog bone bolts, right? The bolts that hold the transmission and engine together, or the engine transmission assembly to maybe the subframe, like on a Mark IV and many other VWs. So bolts are tough, even at the dealership, even, with all the factory resources. Sometimes finding bolts can actually be really challenging because the bolts don't always look like they're in the right spot, or they don't look like they actually look when you're holding one in your hand, right? My recommendation here is to go to the dealership and use their resources that they have, and probably buy the bolts because you're going to be there anyway. Now, you're thinking, Charles, why would I buy from the dealership? They're just going to rip me off. They're going to charge me $9 for a bolt, right? And I can get this other bolt for like 4 cents at Rock Auto. I get it. And you order the 4-cent bolt and throw it in the toolbox and have extra. But guys, we have to analyze how much time we're spending versus just getting the stupid part. And I'm not fussing at you. I'm actually fussing at myself because I have done this exact thing. Spent hours and hours and hours trying to find the right thing when I could just go to the dealership and get it there. And yeah, I might pay 10% more, but if I'm not buying 100 bolts, it's not really that big of a deal. You're looking at 6 bolts that are specialty bolts. We want to make sure we have the right hardness. We want to make sure that they either have a washer captive or a shoulder on them, or have the little stud on them for a ground connection. And we want to make sure they're the right length, thread pitch, and width, and everything else. And the dealership can typically get you this information. So the dealership, you're going to get your VIN, you're going to go there, and yeah, it may be dumb that you need the VIN, but just bring it because it's going to be easier for the parts associate to look this up for you. And they're helping us, right? So we want to make their life easier. And give them the VIN and have them look up, the bell housing bolt or the dog bone bolt. They're going to go to the screen. Sometimes it gives them the bolt information, length, thread pitch, that kind of stuff. Other times it doesn't. It just gives them a part number. Either way, you're going to be able to go, okay, I want that one, and they're going to tell you, okay, we'll order it, or okay, we'll have one, we have one in stock. But you can also get the part numbers so that maybe if they don't have it in stock, you can search by the part number and find it that way. There's other resources. I think vw.parts.com, it has a lot of that parts information too, but you can spend hours and hours and hours digging for it when a simple phone call or going to your closest dealership, if it's not too terribly far, can get you that part right then and there, and you can start to get the job done. For you, it doesn't sound like that's going to be a huge deal, but don't spend 10 hours searching for a bolt to wait 4 days and hope it's right when you can go to the dealership or somewhere else. Junkyard is another really good spot, and you can just get one and get moving on the job. And again, this is something I've struggled with on project cars before, being held up and over analyzing when you could just get the factory one. And yeah, you're going to pay a couple bucks more for it, which is not awesome, but you're not going to waste all that time trying to save $1 on one bolt. Now, if it's 500 bucks on a transmission part, I'm in, save the money. But when it comes to a bolt, just get the bolt and get the job done. Mostly talking to you, Charles, because you got a lot of stuff to do on the Mark III. All right, next up is from Martin. Hey, Charles, got in touch with you to find out what you would do with the issue of the distribution chain. Car is a Jetta 2010 TSI that has 85,000 kilometers on it. A few days ago, I was reading about the chain just before starting a trip of about 1,500 kilometers. The question is, should I change all 3 chains? Have you read about value block 93 in VAGCOM? Is that data reliable? I found myself with a data negative 4.77. Hope you understand since my English is not very good. Wish you an excellent 2019. Martin in Argentina. All right, Martin. You probably want to at least change the timing chain, right? And that's what we're talking about. We're talking about the timing chain on a TSI engine, 2-liter, so CCTA, CBFA, the chain-driven 2-liter engines. So first, what chain should you replace? I want to say what chain you should change, but then I can't even imagine what the little closed caption text looks like when I try and say that. You need to do the timing chain, okay? That one I think we can all agree on. As far as the oil pump and the balance shaft, I usually don't mess with them. The only time I would mess with them is if I saw some severe damage on that gear, or if I had a balance shaft issue or an oil pressure issue. And if I got an oil pressure issue, probably not doing just chains anyway. I need to find out why I have this oil pressure issue. That oil pump chain is a dumb chain with just a generic spring tensioner, so there's not a whole lot can fail with it. On the balance shaft, that's going to be the one furthest in on that engine. It has a tensioner very similar to the VR6 timing chain tensioners, and it's not a terrible idea to replace that, especially if you have a lot of carbon buildup. Maybe the vehicle wasn't maintained well through its life. I'm not sure if you're the one that's owned it or not. Either way, it doesn't matter. That's something you're going to want to evaluate. You can convince me very easily that replacing the balance shaft tensioner is a good idea. The chain, I don't really think you need to go there, but the timing chain guides, the tensioner as well, everything related to the timing circuit, so crankshaft to camshafts and everything that chain touches, at this point, I would probably go ahead and replace. Now, as far as the VAGCOM information, yes, it is reliable. All you're doing when you're plugging a scan tool in and looking at data is looking at data. There's nothing that is going to be really lost in translation, especially on something like VAGCOM, from when the ECM sees it to when you see it. You're both looking at the same information. It's the interpretation of that information that may vary from technician to technician, DIYer to DIYer, or DIYer to ECM or technician to ECM. That 4.77 is right there on the edge. I think the spec is 5 plus or minus 5. So advanced or retarded timing, I think is 5. So you really want to do that right now. You can do an inspection on that timing chain tensioner. I've done a video on that one as well. Super easy to check. Just pop the cover off and look and see how far extended out it is, or see if it's the old style, which I'm not sure on your car if it's going to be, since it's an Argentinian car. It may already be updated, but you can look at that and see if it's not the updated one, get a chain and a tensioner on it. If it is and it's way far out, get a chain and a tensioner on it. Either way, you got some work to do. So I hope that helps. Yes, the VAGCOM data is reliable. It is my go-to. Love those guys over at VAGCOM. Can't say enough great about them. All right, last one of the day comes from Nick. I have a 14 Mark 7 Golf R dual port Euro spec engine. Very cool. I've recently been getting a P0017 and a P0014. It's intermittent, and I get the ACC error and stop-start error on the display that corresponds to these codes. The car can idle really rough when it's cold, but not all the time. Just an oil change and found some very small metal fragments in the oil pan. Car has 48K. Is it normal in terms of small amount of metal in the oil pan? There's also what sounds like turbulent intake air or something when the turbo is starting to spool between 18 and 3,000 RPM. Noise disappears when RPMs go above that, but that might be because of engine and road noise. There's also a new development with the whistling noise that goes away when I pull the dipstick. I've ordered a new exhaust cam sensor. That is a simple place to start. Okay, a lot going on. First, your noise, when you pull the dipstick, most likely the PCV valve. As far as your codes, those are both timing codes. So what you may actually be having is a reduction in oil pressure. What concerns me is the metal in the oil pan. Now, when I say there's metal in the oil pan, and when any one of you guys watching says there's metal in the oil pan, there's probably a different amount of metal in the oil pan, right? I'm thinking like there's pieces of the piston laying in the oil pan. You might be thinking there's a little bit of sparkliness in the oil. Either way, we don't really want a ton of that in our oil. What I would do if you still have it is I would pop that cap off the oil filter and see if there's metal in the oil filter. We could be dealing with any number of issues here. We could have oil pressure issues. We could have cam wear issues. We could have one of those spool valves sticking, right? I don't know if putting an exhaust cam sensor on it is really the right answer, just because you have other symptoms. If it was straight up electrical, yeah, that might be worth it, but I don't think that just putting that sensor on is going to fix your car, although it's worth looking at because you got it coming anyway, so you know, easy swap, right? First thing I would do is I would check base engine timing. So put your crankshaft to TDC, put your cams, well, you'll see where your cams are and hopefully they line up with the timing marks. If they don't, you probably have a stretched timing chain or a failing timing chain tensioner. Either one of those is a believable thing. In fact, I think Audi has way more chain stretch issues than Volkswagen ever did. So that's something you really want to look at. You can also look at, like we talked about in the last question, measured value block 93. Yours was a 14 Mark 7, so it's probably UDS measured value block, so you probably can't just go to 93 and do that measured value. Use the search function in advanced measured values. That'll get you right there. It's way easier than trying to remember the UDS values, which I don't even bother trying to do. So we need to start with the basics here. Make sure our base engine time is good. You go ahead and get a PCV valve on the way because I'm pretty sure you got an issue there. That may explain your noise too from your turbocharger. You may also have a boost leak. There's so many things that we could be dealing with here that it's really hard to say, start at this point and this point will get you on the right path because we have so much. We want to focus on the check engine light. At least I would first, because that is a very serious set of faults. If your base timing is out, none of the rest of it matters because your base timing is out. It's like if you want to make chicken tacos and you don't have chicken, none of the other ingredients matter if you really want to make chicken tacos. So start with the faults, make sure that base timing is correct. If it's not, fix that, then move on to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing, because you very well likely have multiple things going on with your car. And unfortunately, I can't go, dude, replace this part, and then this part, and then this part, and we're fixed, right? It doesn't work that way. We have to start with the basic stuff and then work our way up, over, back, sideways, whatever it is to get to the final result. All right, gonna wrap it up there. Questions, comments, you know what to do. Drop them down below if you like the video. Thumbs up button, always appreciate that. Don't forget to subscribe. Thank you guys so much for watching. Happy 2019. I hope it is the best year ever for all of you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.